Okay. Um, so yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this into two parts. First, I'm going to talk about my volunteer service, and then I'm going to talk about all the work I had to do in class. I feel like this would just help organize it a little better. And I'm just going to have this video overlaid with beautiful pictures of my animals so that you get the tastiness that is my hesitant voice, but also the beauty that will be my dogs and my cat. Okay. Arts and scraps. I had never heard of them prior to joining this class and having to do service learning for you guys. But honestly, they were one of the best service learning classes that I've ever had, which is saying something because, like, I've worked with Arts for Reading, I've worked with Step Up, and those were both fun, and, like, I still work with Arts for Reading, but there's something really special about arts and scraps that I hadn't seen before, and, like, I'll get into that. Hold on. So what I did after the initial warehouse sorting was that I would always go to the store on Saturdays, and they always had me sorting in there. It was something that I was apparently very good at, so they would give me really big projects, which always caught me off guard, because I would work. I was kind of stuck at the hip of this the old woman who ran the back. Her name was Donna, and when I would come in, she would put me to work. There's no doubting that. So it was they would have me do these huge sorting projects that so they would give me just giant bags from the back of the store, have me sort them, have me toss out things that wouldn't fit for the store, have me put them throughout the store. I actually got to the point where I know the store pretty well, and frequently they'd have me just go into the fabric room in the back and organize that room, and it always looked like a tornado had torn through it. And, like, there's a reason that a tornado always looked like it had just blown through it. It's because people go to that store in droves, which I had not expected. Like, because I had never heard of arts and scraps before, I didn't expect them to be that big or that kind of, like, entrenched in that area, like, where people rely on them. Because people from all walks of life came there, which was also surprising to me. It was like family, like the diversity, like getting into it, like the families from every socioeconomic status. They had artists of all ages, artists of all crafts. They had old people looking for new hobbies. It was it kind of like felt like it reflected what America's supposed to be, in the sense that it's supposed to be this giant melting pot where everyone has equal footing. And it was kind of inspiring to see the reach that Arts and Scraps has, and to see how it affects all these families by providing them, and the artists and these old people looking for new hobbies and everything, because it provides them with all of these really cheap, not cheap, inexpensive, I feel like would be a better term for it, all these inexpensive goods, so that they can create. And that's the beauty of it to me, is that it's all about creation. It's about finding ways to make things that other people have deemed as trash, make them valuable. And honestly, that's why I think working in the store was a lot more beneficial to me than working in the warehouse. It's like the warehouse felt more mechanistic. Like, I knew we were doing something that was beneficial to arts and scraps, but like I couldn't see it in action because it was just us there. You couldn't see all of the people who relied on the business. So I don't want to say that like working in the warehouse felt like a waste, but it just wasn't as personable, and it wasn't as personal. And the store kind of functions, as I see it, as like a true safe space. And like, people generally think of safe spaces these days as like safe from political intrigue, but this just felt like, I don't know, it kind of almost felt like a spiritual experience to be there, not in any way that a religion operates, but just that it was so, it's a human experience, and it's a connecting experience, and everyone there had equal footing, and everyone there was for the same reason. It was to create. Parents were there to get their children to calm down. Children were there to be excited. It was kind of like life in action. And it kind of helped dissolve a prejudice that I had going into arts and scraps, because like what I see a lot of times with public works projects like this or with nonprofits is that they have a bit of a savior complex, where they're not doing service work for the community, they're doing it for themselves to let me think of a better way to phrase that. Arts and scraps goes in on equal footing with the community that they're serving. They don't do it from a position of higher up trying to elevate the people. They are one of the people. And I feel like you can see this. One of the ways that I saw this the most was with Stevie. Anytime someone entered into the store, she knew them. She greeted them by name, which was just fascinating to me because a lot of people came in. There was a lot of names to remember. And even after the first time that I had been there, when I came in to finish up my hours that second time, she looked at me and she's like, I know you. What's your name? Don't tell me. It's Hannah. It's Hannah. Hey, Hannah. And, like, she knows everybody. Like, they're people to her. And, like, she's not the figurehead of Arts and Scraps, obviously, but I feel like that's how the entire organization is, and to have that be the person that they front, like, it's about making connection, and it's about helping. It's not about getting a tax write-off at the end of the year. It's actually really heartwarming to be part of it, and it makes me want to keep working with them, which is why, yeah, of course I'd like to come in with you guys next year or next semester when you're working on it. And even if it wasn't the great people, sorting has always been something that's always calming to me. But on the subject of Jesuit ideals, this entire organization kind of relies on the belief that their volunteers and their workers are there to benefit others and to benefit the community that they serve. And community isn't even a small term for Arts and Scraps because the reach is so wide and so deep. And, like, yeah, their store is kind of the epicenter of that community, but because they have the Scrapsmobile where they're able to be a mobile learning force. Like, I think we talked about it at the beginning, about how some schools, like, they can't afford to send their kids to the store to get that education, and Arts and Scraps completely circumvented that by having the ability to go to the schools. So transportation isn't even an issue anymore. Like, all that matters is that these kids want to learn and that they're invested, and that these teachers they want their kids to learn and they're invested. It's about education. It's not about privilege. It's about humanity. It's not about privilege. Because, like, with programs like this, you always see them, I don't know, hitting the hardest in schools where they do have the funding to bring in organizations like this, but that's not their purpose. It's not for the money, it's for the people, which is honestly I think that's one of the reasons why this organization was just almost a relief to work with at this point. But yeah, just overall, Arts and Scraps, 10 out of 10, especially the volunteer service that we had to do with them. I would definitely love to keep working with them as a volunteer. I don't know if it's just business world in general is a bit too much for me, but, like, getting into the project, it got frustrating. It got very frustrating at points. I definitely much prefer working on the ground level with the people who are benefited by the organization. Working with the people up top, baby, I'm just not cut for it. But okay, let's get into this. Okay, so to start with, I was the communications person, which meant that I was the one talking back and forth with Olivia over the phone, over emails. We never met face to face, but it was a lot of phone calls and a lot of emails back and forth, trying to get this as perfect as we could get, especially after our initial slip up. Which also meant that, like, after the proposal, I was the one who constructed the memorandum, which is a little frustrating, But, you know, they weren't on the phone call, so I understand why they didn't help with it. And this kind of pulls into my next point of, this isn't exactly a question of what I did do, it's more of a question of what I did not have my hands in at this point, because I did kind of work on everything within this project. And that's not to say that everyone else didn't work on everything within this project, I feel like I was a little overextended when it came to this project. So around the time of the proposal, I had two babies essentially, and those babies were the online campaign and the tracking, just in general, tracking volunteers. Like with this, I was the one who wrote up the deliverables just in total, and then had to cut out a good 80% of what I wrote to keep us within the word requirement or the word limit. So like, ground up, that was my investment into this project, were those two things. Moving forward out of the proposal, like, we did split up the whole, like, who what's the term? Investigates? Yeah. Who investigates each different software type. We tried to get it so that everyone was investigating at least one type of software. And my huge one was your volunteers for that project. For the online campaign, I did all of the 50th, or the 50 hours for the flyers, so like the ones that were based off of Arts and Scraps, like their color scheme. And that was a lot of work, because Canva doesn't exactly, I mean, the free version offers a lot, but if you want to get truly and utterly creative, you do have to invest a lot of time into that, which meant that I couldn't use a template. I had to make all that stuff from scratch. So that's what I did for the online campaign. Oh, I totally forgot to mention the pitch proposal. It was nice to not stand in front of the class and talk there. You saw how wonderfully poorly I did during the final presentation. I got very flustered, so it was really nice that Barbara and Paul stepped up to do that. For that part, we did all pitch in and write sections of it for them to talk about, or at least provide them with the groundwork notes. And then for the progress report, that was totally an equal division. Everyone talked about their own assigned parts. I'm pretty sure, yeah. So like Kinga, her domain, just in general, was the party. Paul's general domain was the board and like background. Barbara at this point had like superficially adopted the whole online campaign, and then I was saddled with the tracking of the volunteers, which at this point was all software, because after that a wonderful first response that we got where we had failed, we did switch to all software and just completely dropped the whole concept of doing low-tech tracking. And then with the paper, this is that final paper. Okay, so this one I did feel like I did the vast majority of the work. That isn't to say that other people didn't do their parts, because they did, for the most part, do their parts. But like, I wrote up the entire section on tracking, which I will revise by the time that you hear this. And like, two other people did their parts. I don't want to name names, just because I'm a pansy a little bit, and I don't like doing direct call-outs. I'm more about vaguely shading. Anyway, so like, after everyone had done their parts in quotes, that's when I kind of adopted the full paper and spent a good 5 hours reformatting, adding in all of the pictures, the color elements, going through and proofreading everything and restructuring sentences and building out different segments of the paper. I'm pretty sure like when I got it, it was like maybe 3,000 words, and then by the end of it, it was like 5,000 something. I added in all of the visuals. Like that was a labor of love on my behalf, and then I almost forgot to submit it because my roommate and I were playing Mario Party. But it got turned in, and like getting into revisions. So with the revisions, we are going to go back to having that equitable division, which is a huge weight off my shoulders personally. Where, like, I think what we talked about in the progress report, like, each part that everyone had there, that's the parts that were, like, subdividing out. Like, I'm going to do all the revisions for the tracking section. Like, Barbara's going to do all the revisions for the online campaign section. King is going to do it all for the party section. Like, Paul's going to do it for the board. And I think the intro is what else he worked on. So, like, getting into this part, everybody has kind of a more equal division of the labor that needs to be done. And equal divisions are, I don't want to say, it's not something that we struggled with, because we didn't. We were actually a very cohesive group, and we were very good about communication. Like, we had a group text chat thing, and pretty sure everybody responded usually within a good 5-15 minutes anytime a message was sent out. So, like, we were really cohesive, and if somebody was slipping, somebody else was able to pick up the work, which was nice. It's just there were times where I feel like people were uninvested, which is understandable because we all got very frustrated with this project. But overall, we were a very cohesive group, and we worked well together, and that was nice. This was probably one of the first groups where I wasn't completely pulling my hair out of my head. Just at times, but, like, I'm sure other people thought that I had my moments, so, like, that's understandable. I feel like that's just kind of part of working with a group, is that everyone's a different personality, and you need to learn how to get past that. So I guess for, like, future reference for me, I need to learn to not hold a grudge and to just move on and make sure that the project gets done, but also to stand my ground. If I feel like I'm being treated unfairly, I need that to be addressed. So it was, even without the project, this was just a good learning experience as to how to deal with groups in general. As for if this assignment was inspiring, I wouldn't say that, actually. Like, it was a lot more inspiring to volunteer and to work with the people at Arts and Scraps. It was more frustrating than anything else to work with the management at Arts and Scraps. Like, this part, it felt more like a job than it did like something. I feel like the gains that I got from this were a lot about patience and fortitude and, like, compromise. Whereas what I got out of volunteering at the store was, that was more about building myself as a person and not as, like, and not as an employee. So that's I think where the difference lies. Like, it was valuable to work on this project, but not in the same ways that it was valuable to work and to volunteer at the store. So, recommendations going forward. I feel like, you know how you had, like, loose deadlines for the volunteer hours? I feel like you should make those hard deadlines for the volunteer hours, just because it'll help everyone stay on track even more. Because, like, I know I got my hours done ahead of time, but, like, I felt bad for King and Paul because it was, like, last weekend, I think, that they were, like, scrambling to get their hours done. So I feel like if the hour deadlines are, like, more enforced, it'll help people stay on track more, and that would be beneficial. And project-wise, if they keep going forward with tracking volunteers, like, that's something that they keep needing more help with, I feel like having a group just do an entire semester of fundraising so that they, like, so that Arts and Scraps can afford a paid software. I feel like that would be incredibly beneficial for them, because, like, I know the other tracking and thinking group, their recommendation was that, like, at this point Arts and Scraps should just keep with the Excel sheet. But I honestly feel like with the amount of volunteers that they have at this point, keeping manually keeping track of everyone's hours is going to become not only beyond tedious and laborious, it's going to be detrimental to how they track their volunteers, because I know, like, at that point it just becomes difficult to manage. Like, even if they do have it broken up into, like, the 3 subsets where, like, there's only a spreadsheet for people who volunteer at the warehouse and only a spreadsheet for the people who volunteer at the store. Like, that's still a lot of volunteers to manage. Didn't she say they had like upwards of 12,000 volunteers? Like, when you say it out loud, it doesn't sound like that many, but that's an egregious number of people. It's a lot. It's a lot to take care of. So, like, they need to, at some point, find a way to invest in a software that can keep track of all of these people for them. More suggestions. Make sure groups are keeping in contact with the manager, like with Ange, so that they don't go through the same hurdles that we had to like jump in the beginning, because that was incredibly stressful, and I feel like it soured everybody's perception of the organization, when really, like, they're a fantastic organization, and like how we view them shouldn't be colored by our mistake. So, like, make sure that groups contact Ange and the rest, like Ange and Olivia, like twice before the initial proposal is submitted. It just as a base work, so that they're not make them learn from our mistakes.